everyone. So we are very fortunate today to have three leaders in the House Democratic Caucus here to address us. I will introduce each of them, and then they can speak to you in the order that they choose, and whatever works for you. So on my far right is Representative Kristine Lytton. She is from the 40th District, and I think we all know what a hard worker she is and what an open mind she has and how sensitive she is to business issues. We're really appreciative of all of that. She is the majority floor leader in the House of Representatives, and she's vice chair of the Ag and Natural Resources Committee, and on top of all that finds time to serve on appropriation and education and rules, which reminds me that we need to get them out of here early because they have a rules committee meeting to get to at 1, so we're going to try to be quick here. Next to her is Pat Sullivan. He was elected in 2004. He represents the 47th District. And he's the majority leader of the House. He also serves on the Appropriations Committee. And as I said about Chris, he also is someone that we can talk to, and he listens, and we're grateful for that. And you all know Jim Moeller. We get to watch him on TVW almost daily, where he serves as the Speaker Pro Tem in the House. He's also on the Healthcare and Wellness Committee, the Labor Committee, Rules and Transportation. Also a very hard worker and a great person to talk to. He's a smart guy like his two companions here, and open-minded, and somebody whose door is always open to us. So I ask you to give them all a warm welcome.
Well, I don't know if I want to speak. I'm intimidated. The power in this room is kind of scary. So, you know, yeah. As you know, the cutoff is coming up next week, and so yeah, but then we go into fiscal mode, which is always a lot of fun as well. Yeah. You know, and so each of the committees is really focused on getting their bills through. We look forward to working with you, as always, as we're approaching this deadline. You know, if there are issues that you're concerned about, that we need to know about, we want to hear directly from you. And so as we move from that transition from the policy cutoff to the fiscal cutoff again, you know, our doors are open to have those conversations to see how we can, you know, better serve the business community in the state of Washington. As we move into the budget season, you know, as you know, now we just passed, by the way, the supplemental budget, moving the forecast up to February, so we'll have the February forecast, and then we'll move forward on the budget. That process has already begun. You know, I think that, you know, if you want to see a budget that's a good budget, it will take time, and so I wouldn't expect to see that shortly after that February forecast. But our goal is to push forward as quickly as we can and as responsible as we can. I hear rumblings over in the other chamber, something about transportation. We'll see what comes out of that chamber and then have that conversation. I can say that, you know, I know it's a priority for AWB and something that I think everybody in this room wants to see happen. We were talking beforehand, I think all three of us want to see that happen. As a matter of fact, all three of us, I think, have already taken that vote twice in favor of a transportation package. That being said, I just want to be upfront and honest to the fact that, you know, it's very difficult to vote for billions of dollars for transportation at the same time that we sit with the contempt order hanging over our heads and struggle with finding the revenue to ensure that we can amply provide for our education system. And so just want to be clear that we need to continue to have those conversations and how we can move forward on our operating budget. You know, so transportation is critical, but we've got to resolve our operating side before we can really move forward on a transportation package that, again, I think that we all in this room want to see happen. 105 days, that's our goal. We want to be done in 105 days. You know, the fun part about it is that one, I think we get a unanimous vote. And so that is our goal. And, it's amazing when you look at, the fact that, we're already well into session and time is ticking. And so again, I think that we all recognize that in order to be done within those 105 days, we're all going to have to accommodate. We're going to have to give some. We're going to have to, move toward each other in order to ensure that we can get done and make sure that we get the product that we all want to see for the citizens and the businesses of the state of Washington. And we look forward to doing that. Look forward to answering our questions. I'll turn it over to either one of these two if they want to add anything. But we'll just go ahead and move forward with questions.
When majorities get narrow like this, say 51 and a half, I think actually this is the narrowest majority since I've been. Yeah, well, 2, but and in the Senate I think it's 2 also. The extremes tend to fall off, and we tend to govern from more of the middle, and I think you probably might see more of that happening. Although those bills specifically will come out of committee, they may not make it to the floor.
So, and I would say that, these aren't new issues. I mean, I think we've had conversations about these issues all along. I mean, the fact that, from my perspective, our goal is actually to move these bills forward, to send them over to the Senate, and to continue to have the conversation. I think when my restaurant association came in, I asked them, would you rather take a chance with an initiative, or would you rather try to solve the problem here? And I think there was an agreement from the group that came to visit me then that let's have the conversation and see if we can get an agreement. It's much better to solve our problems in Olympia rather than have them go to the ballot box. And so, I think our hope is that we can move these bills forward, continue to have the conversation while they're moving forward, but there's no expectation that the Senate's going to pass the bills in any form that we send it over there. But that's how our process works. We send over bills that they're going to want to change. They're going to send over bills that we're going to want to change. And in the end, we come together, we have the conversation, along with the conversation with you. And again, hopefully in the end, it's a product that we can all support. And that's our goal. Well, I think if we get an agreement, as you know, I mean, it really takes the steam out of any initiative, really support, I think. If you can solve the problem here, you never can guarantee what happens out there, but, I think if we do it here, it really makes it more difficult.
Just a little follow-up, because I had to travel on the last minimum wage initiative, travel around the state on the lowest voices against it, and I was in the meeting, and they said this will be it, fixed inflation, this will be it, so I don't buy it.
Oh, no, don't get me wrong. I mean, these issues, there's a cycle, and 10, 20 years from now, when I'm long gone, probably from this earth, but, I don't mean to say it'll never come up again, but I think that right now it's a highlighted issue, and there's more attention paid to it than there has been in the recent past, so.
Yeah, so with many of us, we've been working, bipartisan, bicameral, and trying to identify the scope in the general fund, and specifically as it relates to McCleary of how are we going to pay for it. I think the general consensus is that we will need revenue, and even talking to Gary ahead of time, I think that's the way we're going to go. I don't see, particularly, when we left session when was that, March, with a 4-year outlook even, that did not include McCleary. We left with a $19 million fund balance. With McCleary on top of that, whatever you look at that dollar amount to be, with the addition of the other 3 Supreme Court decisions that came back that we needed to fund, and with the OSO landslide, and with the fires, we have a significant hole to fill. I know I'm losing my voice. J.T. Wilcox, the minority floor leader, and I both have colds today, and it's we are in this petri dish of germs, and I think we're all getting sick again. So. Sick and safe leave, yeah. Yeah. So I think the general consensus in our caucus, we have spent time on it before session and during session, is I don't see any other way. Oh, that opened up a lot of hands. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, so there have been a lot of conversations amongst legislators and with our legal counsel as we're going through that process. You know, the actual initiative was written to the basic education statute. And so there are a lot of questions about, you know, there's this new world now where when we look at education policy, unless there's an education rationale for amending a basic ed law, you can't do it because of a failure of resources. I mean, the Supreme Court's been very clear about that. So we're working our way through that process to determine, is this part of basic ed, which pieces can be amended, because clearly there are pieces, say the later grades, lower class sizes, you know, research shows that it's not as that those resources are not as effective in better outcomes. And so you could amend that because we've got clear studies that show that. But there are other components where we're going to have to be more careful. So we're still having those conversations with our legal team. You know, I was in LA back in 1993. So I can say with some degree of certainty that there's no desire to put a sales tax on services. Jim, Chris? Boy, that is a wonderful question. Thanks a lot, Cliff. No, you know, so we're having those conversations. You know, going back to what Carolyn said before, you know, I mean, these are all conversations that you have to have. A lot of these are concepts that, you know, were brought in before session, didn't have a whole lot of time to actually, you know, debate them, think about them, and so we're doing that now. It would have been probably more fortunate to have it earlier. But that being said, you know, the climate change, the larger climate change bill passed out of the Environment Committee this week. It'll be heard in appropriations, and we're going to have a lot of conversations about it. I can't say where our caucus will be. I think from a revenue perspective, you know, I hate to dismiss any ideas, although I just did on sales tax on services. You know, I think we need to be somewhat flexible and consider all the options. You know, I just think it's far too early in the session to say, you know, except for the one exception, that we're not going to move in this direction until, you know, you sort things out. And so I can't say for certain. I'm not just trying to avoid the question. We'll just have to have a lot more debate. And I'm expecting that our members are going to hear from all of you about these issues as well. So, and continue to have those conversations with our members. The question is whether we will pass a budget with revenue tied to that budget. And, you know, again, I think it's a little bit premature. You know, it's hard to believe, and I know this is going to be really hard to believe that, you know, Democrats don't just jump to taxes first and then do the budget afterwards with whatever we have available. You know, I know it's hard to believe, Gary. It's, you know, we actually are going through that thoughtful process to determine, look, you know, we're going to fund the things that are priorities. We're going to look at areas where we can be more efficient. We're going to look at areas where we can cut. Then we're going to find out what we need, what that gap is. And at that time, we'll determine, you know, what type of revenue might be needed and what the options are. So I think it's just a little bit too early to determine, you know, first of all, what types of taxes will be needed, how much will be needed, and whether we pass those at the same time with our budget or we leave it open for conversation. You know, I think it's just a little too early.
Okay, one last question.